chance in an overtime and be Iowa Caitlin. So this right here let me know that Caitlin Clark is not hurt. What we seen her do late in the fourth, early in the fourth quarter, let me know Caitlin Clark went off script. Yes, they're running a script for Kelsey Mitchell and other players around Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark said, F this, I'm shooting logo threes, I'm getting inside, and I'm getting buckets because we're going to lose. So shout out to Cece for putting her heart and soul on the line for this Indiana Fever.
The Washington Mystics walked away with a victory over the Indiana Fever, and the result leaves a significant mark on Stephanie White's coaching record. While some fans have been reluctant to place blame, the situation demands an honest assessment. White's handling of lineups and rotations has been questionable, but the roster construction problem extends beyond the head coach. Kelly Christoph and Amber Cox both played meaningful roles in assembling this team, and the shortcomings on display reflect decisions made at multiple levels of the organization. The blame does not belong to one person alone. It belongs to the entire front office structure. What the game also made clear is that Caitlin Clark took things into her own hands when the situation called for it. The shots she attempted late, deep, off-script, aggressive, were not part of any designed play. Clark essentially abandoned the structured game plan and started making individual decisions because the team was on the verge of losing. That kind of performance, under those conditions, deserves recognition.
To Cece for putting her heart and soul on the line for this Indiana Fever basketball team, man. Now we got to talk about the Washington Mystics. Now the Washington Mystics, we got to give credit to where credit is due. They came out and they done a lot of good things with shutting down Caitlin Clark. Sonia Citron exploded. I'm pretty sure she's sick of all the Caitlin Clark comparison. And a lot of these young ladies went out there and did what they had to do, man. They're a young basketball team as well. And, you know, we got to get.
On the other side, the Washington Mystics earned every bit of praise coming their way. Sonia Citron had a breakout performance and looked like a player with something to prove. The entire Washington group executed at a high level, suffocating Indiana's offense through long stretches of the contest. Their post-game celebration video, filmed inside the Fever's own arena, reflected just how much the win meant to them. Head coach Sydney Johnson and the entire roster were visibly energized. And rightfully so. They earned that moment. The numbers from Indiana's side tell a difficult story. Shooting 38% from three is not acceptable. Free throw shooting came in at 79%. And the team pulled down 44 rebounds, but 36 of those came on the defensive end, which highlights a persistent failure to attack the offensive glass.
Do, man. They're a young basketball team as well. And, you know, we got to give credit where credit is due. Now, they did drop this little video after the game. Now, imagine this. A team in your stadium, right? They're in the Indiana Fever Stadium, and they took it upon themselves to drop this message right here.
W.
Most damaging of all, the Fever committed only 11 turnovers, while Washington coughed it up 21 times. Losing a game while forcing 10 more turnovers than the opponent is almost entirely a coaching problem. That gap should not result in a loss. And the fact that it did points directly to strategic and systemic failures on the bench. The parallels between White's current tenure and her earlier stint at Vanderbilt are becoming harder to ignore. The same breakdowns in discipline, the same defensive inconsistencies, the same inability to hold advantages. It is tracking in a very similar direction. Indiana has now dropped back-to-back home games, and whether they can secure a single home win at this stage has become a genuine question. White addressed reporters after the game. On Caitlin Clark's fourth quarter performance. 5 3-pointers in that stretch alone. More than her total from the first 2 games combined. White acknowledged the group showed resilience and hit difficult shots when it mattered. She pointed to strong time and score execution in those moments, but admitted it needs to happen throughout entire games, not just in bursts.
Oh wait, is that the dunk? I forgot we do this. I'm new, guys.
Now, Sonia Citron is a class act. She ain't rubbing in. She ain't.
On the defensive collapse in the second and third quarters, White was direct. The offense gets put under impossible pressure when the defense does not hold up its end. She called out poor positioning, communication failures, foul trouble on contested shots, and coverage breakdowns. Her point about defensive energy was clear. It cannot be conditional on whether shots are falling. That mentality has to be the starting point, not the byproduct of a good offensive stretch. Washington scored 58 points in the paint, including during overtime. White cited a lack of intensity, poor off-ball awareness, and a tendency for players to relax once their direct assignment passes the ball as the primary reasons. The paint kept getting attacked so successfully. On late-game execution, White credited assistant Austin for designing sets that generate quality opportunities and noted the team has been sharp in those specific moments. The concern, she admitted, is that Indiana has been forced to rely on those plays far too often. A sign that things should never be reaching that point in the first place. The critics are asking hard questions, and the answers being provided have not been enough.
Ain't rubbing in. She ain't none of that. She ain't. Watch how Citron is. That was all she did. Now, Sidney Johnson. Oh, he lit. He lit. You just cannot believe it. I think this was like their damn Super Bowl. They were so lit, hell, we can't even find a press conference to after this game. That's how lit they was. I can't even lie. They're super duper lit, and they deserve to be lit, man. The Indiana Fever did not play well.
The fake playoff run is the single worst thing that could have happened to the Indiana Fever organization. It convinced the front office to double and triple down on a formula that was never built to last. Here's the reality. Teams can steal individual games with poor shot selection. Pro players can get hot. Hustle plays can cover up bad tactics, and a short playoff series can go sideways for all kinds of reasons. But nobody builds a 40-win season on garbage. That ceiling simply does not exist. Regular season results are the truth. Playoffs are noise. Steph White apparently never got that memo.
Did not play well. I mean, they did not even remotely play well, man. I mean, they had 38. I mean, they were shooting 38% from three, which isn't good. Just like I told y'all, they had 79% free throws made. They had 44 rebounds. 44 rebounds, guys. 36 out of the 44 was defensive rebounds.
In a recent game, Indiana was up by 13 when Clark came off the floor. By the time she returned, that lead had shrunk to 1. The team eventually fell down 14 in the fourth, and Clark single-handedly pulled them back into contention. They were on a 14-2 run. Then Kelsey Mitchell re-entered, and the whole thing fell apart. The issue with Mitchell is that 2 entirely separate players exist inside.
her. One version is among the sharpest off-ball guards anywhere in the league. The other version dribbles into oblivion and forces shots that have no business being attempted. That second version carries a career win rate of around 25%.
Was defensive rebounds. This has become an issue for the Indiana Fever, bro. A major issue, bro. I'm not even going to lie. Now, the Indiana Fever only had 11 turnovers. How do you lose to a team with 21 turnovers? They had 11 more turnovers than y'all. 10 more. They had 10 more turnovers than y'all. And y'all lost. How is that, bro?
The playoffs made people forget that second version exists. Because Mitchell ran hot for roughly 10 games, the organization convinced itself it had something sustainable. It did not. The Mystics
collapsed. The Aces were inconsistent until the finals. The Storm had a game essentially won before a missed box out and a shaky decision in crunch time handed it away. Indiana barely scraped into the postseason on the back of Mitchell going on a historic personal run. That is not a blueprint. That is a lottery ticket that got cashed once. Now look at the bench.
How is that, bro? That's coaching. So all the people that says coaching is not an issue for the Indiana Fever, I'm here to tell you it very much is an issue. As much as y'all want to tell yourself that it's not an issue, it's definitely a freaking issue, bro. I'm not even gonna lie. Stephanie White is the culprit. And if you know anything about Stephanie,
comparing the Fever's depth to even the Connecticut Sun, widely considered a struggling team. The Sun win nearly every position battle. Alyssa Thomas over any Indiana big. Reagan Beers over Damaris. Dantas. Natalie Achanwa over any Fever reserve. Shekinah Robinson over her equivalent. That's at minimum 3 bench players on a bottom-tier roster who are clearly superior to what Indiana is running.
Out. Add Kennedy Burke and Hallie Washington when healthy, and the gap gets worse. This is not a coaching problem.
Just go in. These are pro basketball players. You can win games by being tactically outclassed if your players play harder, they make the hustle plays, and they hit shots. What you can't do is win over 40 games or 44 games. That's not going to work. It is straight up not going to work. There's a reason why there's a difference in regular season. In the playoffs, do whatever fuck you want, Steph. But the Indiana Fever in this game.
Firing Sandy Brondello would change nothing. This is a front office structure problem. A Katie Smith problem. Rooted in poor evaluation and misplaced confidence. The organization had an entire
off-season to rebuild. The condensed timeline they keep referencing only applied to American players who were local and available. Meanwhile, the rest of S League was Soslo Dum Prague. Tracking who
was starting in Spanish leagues, watching performances in France and Hungary, and beyond. Other organizations built relationships overseas, identified players on the rise, and came back with
depth. Indiana sat still. Had the Fever been in Prague for Eurobasket, they might have noticed Apolline Nastic running a starting point guard role at an elite level. A player who could have replaced a
roster spot currently occupied by someone far less impactful.
You want, Steph. But the Indiana Fever in this game were up by 13 points when they subbed Caitlin Clark out. They're up by 1 when she comes back in. It's then complete shit show. They're down 14 in the fourth, and they get it back to get the lead. And Kelsey Mitchell comes back in, they lose. They literally, Caitlin Clark single-handedly dragged the team back from down 14. They were on a 14-2 run.
Amiz Kovacs is another name that deserved attention. These opportunities existed. Nobody in the front office was looking. Instead, the primary scouting it appears the organization conducted was watching
Clark, during a Puerto Rico exhibition, where Monique Billings posted decent numbers against Senegal, a national team that has since lost to Ireland in competition. Billings was waived by her previous
team in 2024, signed as a hardship player, and then handed an above-market contract based on that limited sample. She does not crack a starting five on any other WNBA roster. The roster also carries a 31-year-old undersized guard in a year where the team's most urgent need is size, with Dantas as the only available center. A player who directly contributes to roughly 5 turnovers per game through poor catching and weak defensive positioning. Adding another small guard makes no structural sense.
They were on a 14-2 run when Kelsey Mitchell comes back in the game. And then what ends up happening is that Kelsey Mitchell has gone back, has reverted to pre-Caitlin Clark Kelsey Mitchell. This is not the Kelsey Mitchell that is this elite off-the-ball player. This is the Kelsey Mitchell that is going to take 17 dribbles before shooting a dumb shot. There are two different Kelsey Mitchells. There are two different Kelseys. Sometimes she's the best off-the-ball player in the league. Other times she is a bad shot maker.
The wider picture is damning. Indiana has Caitlin Clark, arguably the best center in the league in Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell on her best days. That is a genuine foundation. And yet the supporting cast is older, slower, smaller, and less capable than the one surrounding them last season. They somehow downgraded from Natasha Howard. They lost Sydney Colson as a backup option. Brian.
January is gone. The team is objectively worse on paper than the version that needed extraordinary circumstances just to reach the postseason.
And the problem is that Kelsey Mitchell, as a bad shot maker for her career, has a 25% win rate. And yes, I get it. Kelsey Mitchell, as a bad shot maker, won them the games of the playoffs. It did. They got lucky. They got so lucky. Like, it is
every competing organization recognized what was coming. They upgraded, they recruited, they were aggressive in free agency and thoughtful in the draft. Indiana gave away the 8th pick in exchange for a 19th. Not to acquire a specific player, but seemingly to avoid holding a first-round selection at all. That is the behavior of a front office that confused luck with competence and saw no reason to push harder. The Indiana Fever have a big three that was handed to them. What they have done with that advantage, in terms of roster construction, draft strategy, amounts to complacency dressed up as confidence.
It's one of those things where they use the playoffs as proof that we're good enough to run it back. They were not good enough at the time. I said it. I fucking said it a year ago. This team is not good. This team is not good. This team fluked the playoff run. And everyone was like, oh no, they can run it back. Look, they're going to win a championship. They're going to run it back with Caitlin. Look, they nearly made the finals without Caitlin. They're going to be better with Caitlin. No. They fluked a playoff run. They fluked it. The Mystics choked. And the Aces, for whatever reason, like the Aces weren't good till the finals last year. Unbelievable in the finals. Give credit where credit's due. They were great in the finals. But like the Aces got, like the Storm got choked against the Aces. Like the Storm had won the game. And Neko Wumake decided that rebounding was optional. And basically almost celebrated too early and let Jackie Young get a putback. And Skylar Diggins shit herself. Putback. And Skylar Diggins shit herself. And missed Dominique Malonga wide open under the basket. The Fever have the worst bench in the league. And that's not an exaggeration. Like, who are the worst team in the league? who are the worst team in the league, is probably the Connecticut Sun. And we're going to look bench for bench. Anissa Morrow versus anyone on the Fever bench. Anissa Morrow's better. Reagan Beers versus Demiris Dantas as backup center. Reagan Beers is better. Nell Angloma versus anyone on the Fever bench. Nell Angloma's better. Sonia Rivers versus anyone on the Fever bench. Sonia Rivers is better. Charlie Ledger Walker versus the backup point guards. Cool. Indiana Fever have better backup point guards. The Connecticut Sun's bench just went toe-to-toe and got the better of the Aces. And that's not taking into account that on their bench as well is when they're all healthy.